making your flesh creep with pleasure. A new high in excitement.
Video Psychosis.
Hello, and welcome to the Video Psychosis podcast. This is episode 9. I'm your host, Strong Knotz. With me today, special guest speaker. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tori Sinclair. My ex-husband and I ran Bracken Basement Productions together for many years. I'm also a tattoo artist. I've been tattooing for 9 years. Right now I'm at Capital City Tattoo. I also hosted All Freakin' Night in Olympia, Washington for 5 years. Hopefully we're going to be doing something a little different coming up the next couple of years, hopefully involving you actually. And other than that, I speak on panels at Crypticon and work for Olympia Film Society.
And you've directed your own horror short film.
I directed one. My ex-husband actually directed most of them, but I did direct Werewolf, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
The greatest stoner horror comedy.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, so what we're going to be talking about today on the show, because you have such a background in horror, and it's something that you're a big part of, and you've influenced in the community, and, it's obviously something we're all really big fans of. A lot of the people on the show, we've talked primarily about horror movies. Today, you're going to be giving us a list of some of your favorite films, stuff that's influenced you, inspired you.
Yeah, absolutely. My side of making horror movies wasn't so much the editing or anything like that. So my take on it is more from a special effects and acting and costume design, I guess, side of it, rather than actually caring about filmmaking. No, I'm just kidding.
Cool. What's one of the earliest, I guess, influences on you?
I would say one of the earliest that I could think of would be Return of the Living Dead. I think that movie, because I was such a punk ass, it has such a punk feel to the whole thing. That's probably one of my number one most influential movies behind making films is just, Return of the Living Dead. So Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, right? Those are all George Romero films.
Yeah.
But John Russo wrote Night of the Living Dead with George Romero, and when they split up, he was given the rights to the Living Dead part, and Romero was given basically to go off of the dead part. So Return of the Living Dead was something that John Russo was like, finally I can, carry on this in my own way. And Dan O'Bannon actually rewrote it because he wanted to make it okay. Like George Romero had his own kind of genre, or not genre, but had his own...
He left such a big mark on those kind of, movies with those films.
Right, that they felt like they didn't want to kind of like tread on that. So they made it a more like dark comedy or kind of like a campy feel to it, which is obviously, you'll see from my list, I'm very into campy punk stuff, so Return of the Living Dead is definitely like the McDonald's of all that, I would say. The one that you would mostly think of.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pretty clever satire in that movie. It has a pretty accurate view of like 1980s punks, but then you've also got like the anti-authoritarian kind of the crooked government, the guy who just comes home and complains about dinner.
yeah, basically. That came out, 1985? That had the most iconic scenes. You got the tar man, you've got the woman on the table writhing, complaining, talking about
trash,
like the pain of being dead. Oh, trash, yeah. My best friend Bree has cosplayed Trash for a couple years in a row. Like, nailed it. Yeah, like little tiny Linnea Quigley dancing naked in a fucking graveyard. There's so many iconic scenes. But yeah, the tar man, the half dog, there's a lot of things that just became iconic, like images almost in horror from that movie. So it's obviously one that needed to be mentioned. And I guess I've directed one film, so I can like act like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. But when I direct a film, the one time, I do kind of feel like that punk campy vibe like needs to kind of be there, because that's just what I grew up with. So, and that moves on to like Dead Alive, which is my next one. Same thing. Like, Dead Alive has such that campy, silly... Like, I would say that Romero took, like, I did get really into zombie culture when I was in, like, high school, when I met Brie and stuff. So Romero is obviously a big part of that. But going from seeing, like, serious zombie movies to just, like, the ridiculous side of it, which was, yeah, like, Dead Alive, Return of the Living Dead type stuff. Dead Alive is, like, such the number one craziest fucking zombie movie ever. A lot of people talk about the lawnmower scene as being the part that is memorable.
That's the classic, like, gore score.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah. That's probably the goriest scene to this day that I've ever seen. And yeah, that's a Peter Jackson movie, just if you didn't know, which is kind of fun. But
back when he was awesome.
Right. And so the scene, though, for me, is the ear falling off in the custard.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why.
Damn fine custard.
Yeah. No, that was the part that got me the most. Like, that fucking made me sick. And every time I've seen it, has made me sick. So anyone, like, the lawnmower scene is amazing. But, like, that ear custard scene
that's
definitely got me.
And, like, some pus squirts out. Oh, yeah. That's a classic gagger for a lot of people. I love that. My favorite part of that movie is when he has that baby at the playground. You remember where, like, it looks like he's fighting with the baby, and that, like, it randomly cuts to this homeless guy on the stoop waving a bottle around. He's like, yeah, fight that baby.
Yes.
Classic.
I mean, I remember the rat monkey is amazing. There's the scene where the priest is fucking the nun in the basement and make a baby. Right. Yeah, no, there's a lot of really fucking great scenes from Dead Alive, for sure. And then, Evil Dead, I feel like that doesn't really need to be talked about that much. Yeah, Evil Dead's cool if you didn't fucking know.
Well, those movies, we talked a little bit. My last guest on the show, Henry, talked about how he hadn't seen the first Evil Dead film in, I think, several years, and he was talking about how he was always a fan of the second film, was like his favorite, and he was talking about how he kind of forgot how the first one isn't quite as, like, funny. It's a little bit more serious, and it does have a few, like, campy things in it, but it is kind of like a serious toned movie. And I actually think the first one is probably my favorite of the series, just because I like how it just kind of has that nice feeling of a bunch of friends in the woods trying to make a movie. I love that kind of feeling.
Well, that's exactly what was happening. It was a bunch of friends trying to make a movie. I think that was a college project, wasn't it?
I know that the Raimis were going around. I think they were asking, like, dentists for money to fund the movie.
Right, yeah. Okay, so I know that the second one was what, like, they wished it would have been with a budget. So I guess seeing the original comparative to the second, it's basically just the same story but with a different budget. I don't know. Yeah, I see what you mean. Like the first one, like I've made a lot of low budget films and they have heart in them, and I think that that's what's really important. So, or it can be seen more than like money thrown at something. You can see the heart put behind something. So yeah, I would say Evil Dead 1. I mean, Evil Dead 2 is honestly my favorite of the two, but I understand where you're coming from with Evil Dead 1 having more heart behind it, for sure.
I mean, I love all three of them. They're all great.
Yeah. It took me a really long time to watch Army of Darkness.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It was one of those movies that was played at, like, stoner parties for me a lot, where, so I would be like, whoa, this is so dope, but I'm gonna smoke weed about it and not pay attention. Yeah, like in high school. I don't know.
It's relegated to the background there a little bit.
Yeah. So, that one took me a long time to watch, but once I finally did, I was like, oh, yeah, obviously, this is fucking amazing. But it just seemed like the mainstream version of Evil Dead. Everyone knew about Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
I feel like in high school, not a lot of people really knew about Evil Dead.
Well, that's like, I think Army of Darkness is one that, like, appeals to more people because it is funny like the second one, but then it has a more, like, sort of fantasy action sort of, kind of thing going on. But then, like, I mean, like, it's mostly horror sort of people who enjoy the first two, but, like, Army of Darkness, I would say, is probably the most, like, accessible.
So I would say, like, in high school, I remember, like, Army of Darkness and, like, Idle Hands and, like, SLC Punk and Donnie Darko being, like, kind of, like, those kind of fringe at the time movies that were, or cult classics at the time that I definitely had to wrap my head around. Next on my list is Semetary Man.
That's from the director of Stage Fright, the 80s movie, Michelle Soavi.
Yeah, actually. It's a 1994, just fucked up. Yeah, it's just a very weird feeling movie. But I think that movie inspired me just because it's so beautiful and romantic, but so fucked up and campy and morbid. And, like, the whole feel of the movie is just kind of this guy trying to... It's not even in this world. It's not even, like, of this world.
Yeah, they seem sort of, like, detached a little bit.
Yeah, so it's just about this guy who's tending a cemetery and the people keep coming back to life, and he falls in love with a woman who is mourning her husband. It's fucking so sad because basically the premise is that people come back after 7 days, so this person that's taking care of the cemetery is killing people as they come back But this woman that he fell in love with, she waits by her and she comes back and he kills her. But then she comes back again. So he realizes that in that moment that he might have actually been the one that killed her. That she wasn't actually dead. And it's just really heartbreaking. And he meets multiple reincarnations of her that just aren't like up to par with the original. So I know that he kills at least one of them.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah.
It's interesting that, like, the main guy in that movie, isn't that, like, Rupert Everett, I think?
Yes.
And he's mostly does, like, romantic comedies and stuff like that. So to see him in a movie like this is really cool.
Well, it's kind of a romantic comedy, too. Yeah, It's weird. Yeah, it's, like, super beautiful, but, like, I've seen that movie plenty of times, and I still haven't quite made sense of it. So,
that's classic Italian stuff right there.
That's fair.
It's all about, like, the image, not necessarily the idea a lot of the time.
I think the best part that everyone will agree is the romance between, like, I think it's, like, the farmer's daughter or someone, or no, it's, like, someone higher up's daughter and the, like, best friend.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how she gets
Are you
decapitated.
talking about his, like, sidekick guy or whatever?
Yeah, like, she gets decapitated and he brings her head back and they have this, like, ongoing romance. It's really cute. Oh, cute's the word, but... Yeah, Semetary,
and
man.
that's another zombie movie, but like a non-traditional kind of zombie movie. It's not like oh, they're taking over, we got to kill them. It has a more interesting slant than that.
Right. I think, what does he call them, returners or something like that? He calls them something different. They never
Something
say
like that.
Zombies, but yeah, it's just kind of like, okay, Dad's coming back every 7 days, just got to deal with it.
Stay away from the Zed Wood.
I put Dawn of the Dead on my list, but I don't mean the original. I actually mean the remake.
Talk about old Zack Snyder.
Yeah, the Dawn of the Dead remake, I would say, was more influential to me than the original, just as a filmmaker. And I'm just going to say that because I'm a millennial, I'm younger, so that movie came out in 2004.
Yeah.
And I would have been, like, still in high school. I graduated in 2005, so yeah, I was still in high school. And I remember staying home sick one day and watching that movie, and that was the first movie that I ever watched this, like, special features of.
Yeah.
Like, ever. Like, so I stayed home all fluish as fuck watching fucking Dawn of the Dead remake backstory bullshit, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, that they, now looking back on it, I understand everyone's issues with the remake and versus the original, and the only thing I can really agree with is that I think it should just have been a different title.
Yeah.
Because I still think it was such an amazing movie that...
it could have held its own.
Right,
Yeah.
and the only similarities was that it was in a mall and there was a pregnant chick, and
Yeah.
even that didn't turn out the same way as the original. So, whatever, but definitely dove the fuck into everything I could watch backstories-wise on that movie, so I have to give it credit, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the main actress. She
Yeah.
was in. She was great in that movie. Go. Yeah, and I mean there's a lot of interesting things. It has that Richard Cheese cover of Disturbed.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah.
And there's one scene at the very beginning where, I'm still not 100% sure if this is true, but I feel like I could have looked this up by now. But when she is running away from her little girl neighbor that turned into a zombie, and she just, like, flies into the fucking... Like, she just hits her head so hard on the tub, and I think that was unscripted. Like, I just want to think that they accidentally... Like, it just looks so real. They're like, whoops, we're gonna use it. Like... And I just want to believe that that's true. So, yeah.
All right, cool. So what would be something else on your list there?
I got Ichi the Killer.
I'm a fan of that director. I like a lot of his films. Like he's gotten a lot more popular in the last decade, which I think is cool because he makes those really, not everything he does, but he makes a lot of those really provocative movies that are full of, like, you know, sex and violence and sometimes sexual violence, which is not so fun.
So who he's talking about is Takashi Miike, who made Ichi the Killer, Audition, Visitor Q, among many other, like, iconic horror movies. Ichi the Killer is probably the most mainstream one, I would say. If you haven't heard of Takashi Miike and you really like mindless gore, fuck yeah, dude, this is your shit. Ichi the Killer, this one to me was, so my production company was called Bracken Basement, right? The way that kind of came about was my ex-husband's family, their basement was the cool place for the cool kids to hang out, like the skater kids.
That's right.
Cool place? Cool kids to hang out?
The cool zone.
whatever. So that's why I named it Bracken Basement, is because in high school I remember being invited there and being like, holy shit, I'm in the Bracken Basement. Like, I'm a cool kid. Yeah. So when I was probably about 18 or 19, I came into the basement and saw a flyer for, it was like a party that from when his parents were out of town, but I saw a flyer for Ichi the Killer on their wall, and if you haven't seen it, it's like this guy with his cheeks are cut, and he's got his cheeks like pierced back together, and it looks really weird. So Ichi is like the kind of superhero person in the movie. Kakihara is the one with the pierced cheeks. Okay, so I saw him first and kind of mentioned it like in the basement, like, holy shit, what's that poster? This is fucking cool. And Ian, my later husband, that's kind of how we started talking, was it's like, oh, you like that? Like, let me show you every fucking thing ever. So he's like, you gotta stay after the party and I'm gonna show you the fucking Japanese version of Kill Bill. You know, like, that's how we became friends. So, yeah, I gotta say, Ichi the Killer was definitely how I started talking to my ex-husband. So that's kind of cool. I mean, that movie is gonna have some bad things said about it. I think the main thing that people are gonna say is that there's like 3 or 4 women in that movie and they all die brutally.
Or like get beat up.
Right, and kind of in the moment, I mean, it's like the men seem to be really like slapstick in the moment, where all the punches sound like fucking like boom, pow.
Well, it's really
like a
exaggerated.
Batman cartoon.
Yeah.
So
and I mean, even the quote unquote, I don't want to say like the hero or like, but the protagonist. I mean, Ichi, you know, the superhero type guy. Even he's like a really fucked up person.
Oh yeah.
You know, so there's not like any really good people in that movie. You know.
No, there's no redeeming anyone in that movie. But Ichi's still the most like you feel for him because he's like the child, and I think that's kind of something about the film, is that they almost are showing how people can be like groomed to hate a certain group. And I think that's part of it, is Ichi being groomed to hate women. You can look at it that way, or you can look at it as just it's a fucked up fucking movie. The way that I look at it is the intro scene where Ichi is jerking off to the rape. When he ejaculates on that plant and it turns into the title. Yeah. That's actually the cum of the
director, I
Mike.
think. Right?
Yeah, that's Mike's cum. Yeah.
That's right.
And I just think that's kind of a fun little like Easter egg. I don't know.
Even just doing that by itself is memorable, but the fact like to make the title of your movie come out of
your own semen, literally your fucking.
I gave birth to this film.
Blood, sweat, and seed.
I love that part of that movie. I guess this is maybe a spoiler, but a lot of people. This is a pretty popular movie by this point. But like the guy who's sort of like grooming Ichi, he like the whole movie he's had this like military jacket on. He looks like kind of a smaller, sort of docile dude. He takes off like the military jacket. He's like this fucking ripped like bodybuilder.
Hell yeah.
That's such an insane movie.
That was a fun one. Visitor Q.
That's my favorite movie of his.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love that movie. I watched that with my girlfriend. It was great, because that would be an awkward date movie for most people, but that's like our kind of movie.
I think that movie is the reason that I have as little friends now as I have, because I know that I definitely told a lot of people to watch that movie like at a fucking young age. So it came out in 2001. By young age, I mean like right after high school. So yeah, Visitor Q, it was filmed as the 6th part of some series called Love Cinema. Did you know that?
Yeah, it was like multiple directors kind of making similarly themed movies, or movies I think about sex or whatever, and they just got different people to have their own kind of film about it.
Right, and they were basically just trying to show that low budget kind of shot on video stuff could look fucking dope, and it did. So it worked out pretty fucking well. It's got kind of that documentary footage style. I mean, that's kind of the premise of the movie, is everything being shot as a documentary of this family, and a visitor comes and I mean, how much do I give away here?
Well, the plot of that movie is kind of something that's been done in a lot of movies, where there's a family and maybe they're like usually a dysfunctional family, and then a visitor comes, stays in the house, changes the whole dynamic of the family. And this is one of those movies, but I'd say it's a lot ballsier, a lot crazier than most of those movies. I
mean, it's not fixing them, it's just showing them that their dysfunctions are...
Well, but it kind of brings them together in the end. It might not fix the family, but they're, you know, like the son's not like beating up his mom anymore.
They can nurse together.
She has joy because she can lactate. That's beautiful.
It is kind of beautiful. Yeah, and I noticed that movie starts with, like, questions.
Yeah.
And then it just, like, dies off. Like, it's like, have you ever fucked your dad?
Yeah.
Have you ever... Yeah, no, it, like, starts off with, like, questions, and it's, like, straight to the point, and then it just dives. Like, it's like, fuck it, we're stuck in a corpse.
Yeah.
We gotta use shit to get us out. It just escalates.
Yeah, definitely one of the classic crazy movies, I would say. That's certainly an interesting one.
But I would say kind of having that, like, home video feel with something that is so far off the rails makes it kind of feel like, okay, this is, like, familiar and covered a bit, like, so fucked up and not right. Like, yeah.
It feels like it's almost like a home movie or something.
That is what it feels like. And it is. But it's, like, the most fucked up home movie ever.
People get hit in the head with rocks.
I mean, a lot. But yeah, it hits on, I would say, every taboo. I mean, they have, like, incest and...
That's like the opening scene.
Yeah.
It's like right off the rip.
Yeah,
Here you go.
You ever fucked your dad? I think is what it said. I might be wrong, but yeah, I think it's something like that.
Oh, man, that's a great one.
Yeah, so they really go off with it right off the bat. Yeah, I just love that, like, the dad is the one who's making the movie right off the bat, like, trying to, like, fuck with his fucking kids. Like, he's, like, seeing his son, be picked on, and he's like, yeah, it's gonna make for good cinema. Like, it's just so fucked up.
Yeah, he's like, just feel the emotion of this.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Have you seen All Hallows Eve?
I have not.
Have you seen Terrifier?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's the origin, right?
Yeah, so All Hallows Eve, you're introduced to Art the Clown. If you've seen Terrifier, Art the Clown, that's his origin story, is All Hallows Eve, which was an anthology. Basically, the way they played it was perfect. It's like these kids... It starts off as such a slow burn where you get this false sense of security within this movie. Of like, okay, these kids find this videotape within their trick-or-treat bag, and it's like, to the babysitter, who somehow they got this girl to babysit on Halloween. Whatever. They're like, okay, we want to watch this movie. She's like, I don't know, a VHS tape of all things in your trick-or-treat bag is probably not a good sign. So, yeah, but she eventually puts it in, and it's 3 different kind of stories within this. And they're all pretty innocent. Like, there's, like, an alien one. It's really corny, whatever. But each one has this repetitive theme with the clown, with Art the Clown showing up. And eventually reality kind of spills over with fantasy. It just kind of becomes really... very blurred at the end, and the ending definitely pays off. All Hallows Eve, I would say, is an anthology that puts a lot of others fucking to shame. Like, that shit is fucking gross. I mean, do you like child death? No spoilers. I don't know. Yeah, All Hallows Eve. That one came out in fucking 2013, which seems like not that long ago, but I guess it was. And the guy that plays Art the Clown in Terrifier is a different actor than who plays Art the Clown in the original. But I actually do think, as much as I will say All Hallows Eve is an amazing movie, that Art the Clown and Terrifier, the actor who plays it, but he does a better job, for sure, with Art the Clown. And so Terrifier should also be on my list. But All Hallows Eve was where that started, and I think that was one that fucking resonated with me for sure as being very disturbing. Moving on from that, this next one is kind of like it's not one movie in particular, it's kind of a group of movies. My friend Ryan Nicholson, who runs Plot Digger Films, he made some movies that maybe some of you have seen. Hanger, which was on Netflix for a while, about the aborted baby that survived and came back to exact revenge on his pimp dad and prostitute mom. Yeah, that one's pretty good. There's also Gutter Balls, Live Feed. There's multiple movies that came out, but basically the thing that I would say with him is what inspired me as a filmmaker was in 2010 when we first started doing conventions. We worked at something called ZombieCon, where we met Ryan Nicholson and Dan Ellis, and at the time his student Megan Nicholson. Her name wasn't Nicholson at the time.
It was Megan.
It was Megan.
Something.
Who fucking cares? Because eventually they got married. So I was really excited that I was there at the beginning of their relationship. I was there the first time they fucked. Yeah, I'm calling you out. Called out at ZombieCon 2010. That's
where the business happens.
Yeah, Dan Ellis, he was the one who starred in a lot of these films, ended up in our room because Ryan and Meg were in their room.
Oh man, they had the coat hanger on the door.
Had a coat hanger on the door. And that, I think, was the first time I was ever, like, starstruck, which is silly, but I just remember being drunk as fuck at 4 a.m. and looking at Dan Ellis across from me while I'm in my pajamas, and he's talking to me about skinhead music from, like, the 80s. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, you're an actor that was in movies that I've seen, and we're sitting here talking, and it was, like, the first actual starstruck moment I ever had. Love you, Dan Ellis, wherever you fucking is. So, yeah, we became really good friends with those guys. Ryan Nicholson actually has been working in the industry since the 80s. He has his own, or I know he had his own school in Canada to teach special effects and makeup and this and that, and that's how he met Meg, which is his wife now. It's just so cute. He worked on the X-Files remake. What a really fun Ryan Nicholson story is that I know he worked on, the Blair Witch remake.
Yeah, the Adam Wingard one, yeah.
Yeah, so the way that was done is they put it out as The Forest for a long time. You know about that, where, each trailer was called The Forest, and then at a film festival, they finally...
anonymity, yeah.
Right, they finally released it as... Oh, it's the Blair Witch, which I think the reason they did that is originally the Blair Witch was done in the 90s, where they could get away with gimmicks like, oh, these people, this was real, and these people are off the grid now. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, those actors actually went off the grid, and at the time, that was shocking and crazy, and when
a lot of people thought it was real, yeah.
Oh, for sure,
and there was even, like, a fake TV documentary that was like, here's some interviews with Heather's mom.
Totally. Yeah. So, I know that in this day and age, they couldn't get away with that, so the way they tried to kind of keep the magic is they put it out as one thing, The Forest, and then eventually put it out as The Blair Witch at a film festival. But what's crazy is Ryan Nicholson designed the witch in that, nice. And he wasn't even told, as someone working on the movie, that he didn't know what he was designing. Yeah, so he
did a good job.
He did a good job, but I just think that's crazy that they even kept it a secret from the people working on the movie at the time. Yeah. So he didn't know that that's what he made.
Those big arms, man.
Yeah. Ryan Nicholson, I just think that's the first person that I met and became really good friends with who had worked on things that I considered just iconic and was like, fuck, this is just a normal person and I can do these things too. So,
yeah.
I think,
cool.
Yeah, meeting Plot Digger and just reading about Ryan Nicholson and learning just who he was as a person and then getting to know him over years. Like, I respect you, man. I guess my next movie is The Dead Hate the Living, which came out in the year 2000.
I always used to confuse that movie with Children of the Living Dead because they were always at, like, Hollywood Video, and the covers, I think, kind of looked similar. So for a long time, I got those movies mixed up.
That's super funny you say that because I do know that the reason that I watched this movie as many times as I did is Hollywood Video went out of business, and I bought every fucking movie I could from them, and that was definitely one of them.
Nice.
You can ask my mom and my sister. I rewatched that movie so many times. My mom was like, you're gonna get fucking sick of this, and I didn't. And I would say that's probably one of my most watched movies ever, which is really weird. Yeah, it's a Full Moon Entertainment movie that came out in like the early 2000s, if that gives you any kind of idea about it. But it was probably the best Full Moon movie that came out, and it does break that barrier of the cliche of filmmakers making a movie, and yeah, basically they find a body and they decide to use it, and then the body comes to life. Like, okay, yeah, that's pretty predictable.
Well, with like Full Moon, you're not really like going in for the story a lot of the time, you know.
Right. No, the story here is bullshit, but the special effects, the fucking zombies look crazy in it, and just seeing what can be done with such low budget and low resources in a movie, I think that one was probably my first low budget movie that I fell in love with, I'll say. Yeah. My next one is The Cell, which also came out in the year 2000.
J-Lo.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people really kind of let that movie go because J-Lo's in it, and I think that movie's amazing. It actually very much captures what a nightmare is. All of the scenes within the serial killer's mind, or just like the nightmare scenes,
fuel.
It's very much like a dream. Each scene is an art piece, I'd say. It reminds me of Hannibal, which I just brought up a second ago when we were outside smoking. Hannibal, the series, is kind of reminds me of The Cell, where each thing is an art piece. Actually, a tattoo artist that I know very well bought the human tree. Yeah, and then he went out of country, and we had to deal with how to take care of this, like, thousands of dollars worth fucking movie prop. So, yeah, we definitely have that somewhere.
You had to talk to the human tree.
Yeah, we had to talk to the human tree. The Cell reminds me of a lot of Hannibal and vice versa, just where everything is an actual art piece within the movie, and I fucking, of course, I'm the special effects person that was going to appreciate that and love that.
That's a movie that was kind of, I guess, dogged on a little when it came out. Like you said, it could be because, you know, J-Lo's in it. But, I mean, if you go back now and you look at a couple of movies, she did some good work. I mean, obviously, you know, she had some bad movies, but they're not all, every movie she did is like Jiggly or like Made in Manhattan or something. Like, she's got good movies, like Out of Sight is a really good one. She's great in that. And yeah, The Cell's really interesting. I knew I liked that movie like 30 minutes in, because there's a scene where she's an FBI agent or something, but she's like smoking a joint in bed watching Fantastic Planet on TV, and I was like, yep, this is my kind of movie right here.
Yeah, she's like eating ice cream and smoking a joint. She's dope as fuck. In her underwear, yeah.
That's right. And then you got Vincent D'Onofrio playing another classic psycho, just like Private Pile.
No, that movie, I think it's already kind of become a cult classic, but I think in its time it will definitely earn its fucking name. It's amazing. If you haven't seen that one and you're only not watching it because J-Lo's in it, fuck you.
And that's also another movie where like Vince Vaughn was still like doing kind of like trying dramatic work, and before he started doing all those, I mean, he had done comedies, but this was before he started coasting into those kind of movies, and then came back and started doing dramatic work again like a decade later. But
he's also just super handsome.
Well, I mean, he did some interesting, like, I don't know if you've seen Clay Pigeons, but he's like really good in that movie.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, he's like a sort of like charming Southern killer guy. It's like one of those kind of roles, but
that's who he is.
Yeah, he showed that he had some range, you know, so it's not like he's the romantic comedy guy. There's a lot of cool things about The Cell.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, even just like that scene where they cut the horse in half is something that I think is something that resonates with me. And also just that scene where they're taking the intestines out.
Yeah. Like
just the way it looks. I've made a lot of intestines for movies, so maybe that's why that resonated with me so well, but those intestines look really good. My next one is Terror Firmer.
That's a good one.
It's a trauma movie. If you don't know what trauma is,
Get Out.
Get Out. Yeah. Trauma.
That's one of the best trauma movies, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, Romeo and Juliet, Terror Firmer, definitely two of the best movies. So Lloyd Kaufman is who runs that production company. Basically, they kind of take on a lot of bullshit. So Trauma, when you look at it as a title, I mean, yeah, you're going to have to sift through some bullshit, but there's a lot of really good fucking films that have come out of it. I think that Trauma is something that is based in low budget, so you have to know that going in. I mean,
they had a submission button on their like website for a long time. They're like, hey, send us your movie, here's our email.
Exactly. So Terra Firma came out. It's again kind of like cliche of a filmmakers making a movie and things going wrong. Lloyd Kaufman plays like a blind director.
Yeah.
And there's two people, or there's three people. There's like a love triangle going on,
right.
And it just gets really fucked up and fucking gross.
Sex
there's,
with
like,
pickles.
Some pickle shit. Yeah. Why is that what I remember the most?
It's very memorable.
This is all I remember.
There's a lot of really... I saw that movie a lot. That's so funny. We talked about Hollywood Video. I got that DVD at Hollywood Video when they went out of business. And it was the 2-disc, like, uncut one. If you put it in your DVD player, if you type 666 on the DVD menu, there's like a little hidden feature. A little Easter egg. But, yeah, Terra Firma is... You also talked about, like, stoner parties, and that was definitely... I remember being at a Halloween party when I was, like, really young, and I had brought that over and just had it on the TV, and everybody's just trash. Like, what the hell is this? You just stuck a bong in that guy's ass.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, no, there's a lot of awesome stuff in there. Like, probably one of the great cinematic quotes. I just got pissed on by a blind independent film director.
Yeah. And I feel like it's just accurate
Yeah.
to life.
Crazy soundtrack. Like, you got, like, Entombed doing, like, a cover of Amazing Grace. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was one. We'll give Brie credit for that. Brie definitely introduced me to Troma. So we watched that movie, like, in her parents' living room.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just kind of fun. Fuck. I'm putting Night of the Living Dead on my list.
You're talking the Romero or the Tom Savini one?
Oh, shit. Well, both, actually. But, I feel like I have to put the Romero one on. Actually, no, both. I think both of them should be on my list. Night of the Living Dead, Romero. That was a budget between him and, like, 5 friends of, like, $114,000 to make that movie. And it ended up being such a cult classic and they didn't even copyright the name, so they ended up losing a bunch of money. I mean, the amount of money that could be made off that movie to this day is offensive.
Yeah, like, and I thought it was kind of sad that, like, the Criterion Collection, like, Janus Films got the rights to that. They're like, yeah, we're going to put out this expansive, like, 2K restoration of this movie, the Blu-ray. Romero makes the money, and then he died, like, before it came out.
Yeah.
I was like, well, damn.
Yeah, I was put on his panel the year that he was supposed to come to Crypticon. I had put so much work into being so excited to talk about all these movies, and then he ended up not coming and saying, yeah, okay, like, I'll come next year. Sorry, guys, I had some lung infection. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Every fucking interview I watched of you were smoking cigarettes. And then he died, like, a couple months later. So, yeah, I guess super honored that I was able to speak about him on panels, but that really fucking sucked, because I was super stoked to meet him. And that was the year that I met the guy that played Martin. Yeah, that was a really awkward interaction for me. I love the movie Martin. I love George Romero. I love Night of the Living Dead. I mean, obviously you have to. I mean, it shaped so many things. Yeah, and it also just has... I hate that I neglected George Romero in this list just because I know that a lot of his movies, like earlier said, Dawn of the Dead, I like the remake better. The original, to me, just had so much in-your-face, like, messages about consumerism. The original Night of the Living Dead has all these messages about, like, racism, but that wasn't on purpose. That's the thing, is the Night of the Living Dead, the original, he didn't even expect for the main actor to be black. It was just his friend who was the best at acting.
Yeah.
That he decided to take that role. And then I know for a fact that as they drove away from editing that movie, they had the edited movie in the back of their trunk ready to release it. They're driving away and they hear on the radio that Martin Luther King had just been shot. And they went, what the fuck did we just make? We just made something different than we realized. So they realized what they had made is going to have an impact, a different impact than they realized. They didn't mean for it to be a racial undertone at all.
Becomes like a metaphor kind of movie almost, yeah.
But it became that. So, and that's fine because that definitely sparked a lot of conversation. So that's great. But that's not what they meant for it to be. So I think a lot of George Romero films have this expectation of having social undertones, or even not undertones, just straight up in your face fucking bullshit like consumerism,
not
and
very
racism,
subtle.
and
Yeah,
it's not subtle at all. Whereas other movies, you know, like, I mean, Martin, that also had fucking undertones. I mean, I think a lot of Romero films kind of it just had that, it had to be all Olympia about it, you know.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, not all of his movies follow that pattern. I mean, I would say the majority of them probably don't. I mean, like, you know, he's one of those people, I think, that sneaks in the subtext, but it's not supposed to be, like, dominating, you know. He's a guy that likes to tell a story, but maybe he also has something to say, but that never takes the focus, like, over the story.
Well, I think we snuck in the subtext, like, what I'm saying, for example, is Night of the Living Dead. That's not what it was supposed to be, and just because of what had happened right before it came out, that's just what it became. So same thing with...
Well, I mean, it makes sense with, like, Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead. Yeah.
Dawn of the Dead was so in your face. Yeah. That one can't be forgiven. But,
and Day of the Dead is, like, pretty much an attack on, like, the military-industrial complex and, you know, like, machismo and stuff like that.
He already knew what he was good at and he went with it. That's fine. But, yeah, Martin, Season of the Witch, those ones when they... I mean, Martin is one that I've asked a lot of people about. Like, you haven't seen Martin yet?
Yeah, I've seen that. That's my favorite movie of his, probably.
But wait, do you think Martin was a vampire?
Well.
Okay.
No spoilers.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, was that real or was that not real? And same with Season of the Witch. Like, what did I just watch? Like, was that a witch or was that a fucked up housewife who just, like, lost her fucking mind? Like, I don't know. Like...
Yeah, and it's, well, I mean, I haven't seen Season of the Witch yet, but in Martin, it is interesting leaving it kind of ambiguous as to whether he is or not, because it makes the ending way more, like, kind of tragic, you know, like we talked about the dysfunctional family. That's, like, a great dysfunctional family movie.
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. One thing I like from Season of the Witch is I know, like, when they were making it, there was this thing at the very end where they're filming, I can't remember the line exactly, but they film her and they ask her something, and her response is, "Oh, I'm a witch." And as she says it, there's this, like, light that just, like, lights up in the corner, and it's, like, totally just a filmmaker's flaw, but it just, like, happens right when she says, "Yeah, I'm a witch," and just a light lights up, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, no, and it was
looks
not...
like it was intentional, but it's not.
Yep, it was not intentional at all, and it was perfect, and it was just like, okay.
Nice.
I guess the next one on my list is Legend. I don't know if you haven't seen that. Maybe I was raised in an 80s household that didn't have TV and I just had movies, so that's all I know. But Legend came out in 85? Yeah, came out in 1985. Ridley Scott, who also made Alien. That movie actually that year won so many awards, like Best Special Effects, Best Creature Design, Best fucking Costume Design, Best Makeup, everything. I think it won, like, pretty much everything as far as special effects and makeup and costume design went. Fuck, if you haven't seen that movie, I mean, it is beautiful. It is Tom Cruise, and it is a fantasy movie. But if you're down for that, then you should definitely fucking watch it. I mean, Tim Curry is the devil. Like,
yeah, I mean, well, that's like one of the good Tom Cruise movies, you know. Even if maybe he's not, like, great in it, it's a good movie that he's in.
It's also one of the good Tim Curry movies.
Oh, well, there's a million of those, dude. Tim Curry's a legend.
Accurate.
I mean, it's really, like, it's incredibly shot. A lot of Ridley Scott's movies look really good, and that movie definitely has, like, a distinct color palette and a lot of really cool imagery. So I think that, you know, I mean, in that fantasy film vein, that is what you want, is really sort of elaborate set design and really cool backgrounds. And, you know, it does a good job of world building. Yeah.
All of that. I mean, like, the ogres, like, his, like, weird disciples and shit. All of the costume design in that, it is very fantasy-based. The unicorns look amazing. Everything looks amazing. No, everything does look amazing in that movie.
I think Legend is a movie that's never been, like, a hugely popular movie or anything, but I think for, a lot of people growing up in the 80s and 90s, that's a movie that you probably saw as a kid.
I definitely grew up without TV, so I just had movies, and the ones that I remember the most would be Willow and Legend and True Lies for some reason.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just weird things like that. But I do know that, I mean, I can't ignore that as being something that inspired me so hard. And I showed Ian that movie, my ex-husband, who I ran a fucking film production company with, and was like, this is gonna be, like, the greatest movie you've ever seen. And he was like, that was stupid. And I was like, I think I missed the mark. Like, you had to have been, like, 13 when you watched it, you know what I mean?
You know, there are a lot of movies, I think, like that. I hear that a lot about The Goonies. A lot of people I know that never saw The Goonies as a kid, when they see it now, they're like, I didn't really like it. And it's like, well, that's your fucking loss, buddy.
I showed my sister It, like, the original.
Yeah.
I remember when she was probably 12, and she was like, this is stupid. And I was like, I missed it. I missed the mark. She had to have been like 8 to 10 for this to be accurate. So I ruined her. So next one on my list is Pet Semetary. I just felt like I had to put that on there because that was sold to, that story was sold to George Romero in like 84, and then he was busy with Monkey Shine, so he passed on it, and it wasn't sold again until like 87, I think. Or 89. So it got sold on to someone else and made amazingly. I love Zelda in it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to bring up, but again, as a special effects matriarchy, that was what I liked about it for sure. Also child death.
Yeah, a recurring theme there. You can never go wrong with child death.
Yeah. I don't feel good about, like,
children in peril / dying is always, it's all the good stuff.
I feel like that used to be like such a, like,
taboo.
like a taboo thing, but now I'm just like, this is just happening all the way across the board on my list.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's totally true. That is like a taboo in movies, like like what John Carpenter, like Assault on Precinct 13, the original. There's that scene where the ice cream man, the little kid's like, I want some ice cream. When that came out, people were like, oh my god.
It used to be so not okay, but now it's like, I seen it.
I seen it all.
Am I a fucked up person that I love kid death so much that I'm real? Is this my own, like...
As long as it's fake, it's okay.
I feel like I'm giving myself an intervention with this list. But yeah.
We're gonna have to bring in a circle of kids to hug you.
Yeah, I don't feel good about this. I don't want to get emotional or anything.
Go ahead. Go right
but
ahead.
2001 Space Odyssey is a movie I would say is the only movie I've ever seen that I fucking straight up cried during. And I'm just admitting that to you because I was supposed to make a list of movies that inspired me as a filmmaker, and I can't ignore the fact that a movie made you
weep.
Fucking literally cry.
Ball.
Because people don't put energy into movies anymore. I mean, it was very emotional.
Yeah.
The first time I saw that, I was like, what the fuck? Like first I was like, this is fucking boring. There's like monkeys jumping around a fucking like block or whatever. But then it just turned into like, god damn it, people don't do this anymore, and it's like so emotional and special. And fuck, it was made in the 60s. You had plenty of fucking time to step your game up, and people like, I don't think any movie has been as beautiful as that.
Oh yeah, did you ever hear that story about, I forget where it happened, but they played that movie at some theater, and this guy went to the screening. I think he was like tripping on something, some sort of hallucinogen. I don't remember if it was mushrooms or whatever, but he went and saw that movie Tripping Balls, and they said this guy stood up in the middle of the movie and was like, give me the answers, Kubrick! Tell me the truth! That's a movie that brings it out of people, you know? We all just want to touch the Star Child.
I feel that way. No, I fucking feel that way. And I just think that, like, I guess looking at, like, myself as a filmmaker, I could do better. Like, look at this asshole. You can tell how much love and, like, okay, I'm not trying to be fucking Olympia hippie child about this shit, but seriously, if you watch this fucking movie, you might also cry. Because people don't put that much energy into movies. Like, you can tell, like, he cared. And I think it all came from Family First, where I put my love, fucking sweat, tears, everything that I had into that movie.
Yeah.
I was like, I get that.
How about that, like, 6-minute trip out sequence in 2001? My god, all those lights, you know what
I think I was the appropriate amount of stoned for that. You know what I mean?
You're never stoned enough to go through that.
I just think that I was appropriately, like, prepared for that movie when I saw it. Whatever happened, I saw it. Like, I fucking cried and
give me my tears back, Stanley.
Yeah, it was so good. You've had plenty of time to do research on this, so I'm almost like mad if you don't know this. But yeah, that's the movie that a lot of people say was the reason that the moon landing was faked, was because Stanley Kubrick had all of this shit on his stage already, and that they were able to like fake it, which is ridiculous.
And they talk about that in that documentary Room 237 about The Shining, that Rodney Asher movie.
They do.
I don't care what nobody says. Give me the answers, Kubrick.
You fuck that shit. I was so mad. I was like, so you're just trying to whatever propagate that shit.
Why is Danny wearing an Apollo shirt in The Shining?
If anyone wants to talk to me about the moon landing, I'm here.
Crying.
That's just side note.
So 2001, yeah, that's a pretty influential movie. That's one of the classics a lot of people had a big influence on. What would be another one from your list there? I would
say... So yeah, I basically gotta argue between Season of the Witch and Season of the Witch.
Which witch is which?
Which witch is which? Season of the Witch from George Romero is gonna have to put on the back burner because Season of the Witch Halloween 3 is my favorite fucking Halloween fucking movie from the whole series.
Tom Atkins.
And I feel like a lot of people feel that way. So I don't think this is that crazy of a fucking epiphany, but...
Well, there's been like a turnaround in the consensus, I would say, where for a long time everybody was like, Michael Myers not even in this freaking movie. And now everybody's like, oh wait, this movie is dope anyway. Oh, by the way, more child death. I just wanted to point out.
Right,
Put
fair.
the mask on.
Yeah, that's super fair. Yeah, originally Halloween was not supposed to be the way that it was. They were going to make each thing a different story. So when they went ahead and did Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which has nothing to do with Michael Myers, people definitely didn't like that because Halloween 2 had taken off exactly where Halloween 1 left off, and so they thought the entire series was going to be Michael Myers.
Halloween 3 is better than the second one, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's way better.
Oh, yeah. Halloween 1 is a perfect movie, I will say. That is the most perfect movie that I probably have ever fucking seen. Like, start to finish, beautiful. Halloween 2, I do love that they picked up on the last scene and kind of kept going with it, but I know now that that wasn't his intention in the long run anyway, so whatever. Halloween 3, they were trying to kind of be like, okay, we're gonna make each thing a different story, and for some reason that didn't track well, which sucks because that movie is fucking dope.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's about like Silver Shamrock, this company that's putting out masks. It's like 3 different masks. It's like a pumpkin and a witch and a skull or something, and yeah. And at the end, spoiler, you have 20 years to do this. Spoiler, yeah, all the kids' fucking faces melt off, and it's fucking dope. Kid death, revisited.
Put on your mask.
But yeah, Silver Shamrock, like...
You can't say that without hearing the music.
And
Beep, 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 beep. Beep, beep.
3 more days till Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. 3 more days till Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Classic. The greatest jingle of all time.
Nailed it.
You know what? It melts my face off without even having the mask on. Just thinking about it. Car door decapitation scene.
It is good. The reason that the fucking face masks were melting the kids' faces is because they had parts of Stonehenge. That is a good one. Okay, Sleepaway Camp is my next one on my list. Honestly, Sleepaway Camp only really makes my list because I met Felissa Rose the first year that I did Crypticon. Sleepaway Camp, as much as it's 100% gonna be on my list for fucking ever, it's still a very boring camper slashy like movie. No, camper slashy.
But they put that guy in the hot pot.
Okay, that was cool.
They boiled that dude.
It's very common. I just think that everything in it is pretty... It's just the ending. That's what gets you.
Everybody does talk about
like,
that
everyone knows the ending is what gets you. Definitely stood by me for a long fucking time. And I got to meet Felissa Rose, talk about that with her, like, at a young age. So that movie's definitely going to stick with me. And she... fucking introduced, like, she's married to the guitar player from CKY, and we told her that our friend Sean was super into CKY, and she pulled apart from the convention and let Sean talk to the guitar player.
That is cool, though. There's not a lot of, like, series of movies where I like all the movies. Sleepaway Camp is one of the rare series where I like all the movies a lot.
Yeah, the girl that took over for her the second 2 movies, she did pretty good.
I enjoy all 4 of those, and I know they, before Return to Sleepaway Camp came out, they had tried to make a different film that didn't quite get finished.
I mean, fuck, Creepshow 1 and 2. Definitely, I worked on anthology movies, I worked on shorts, so obviously I would say this speaks to me.
Which of the 2 is your fave?
I would say the second one is my favorite. I just so much remember meeting the guy that played Martin, being so hungover and walking up to him and saying, "Oh my god, I liked you so much, I spoke on the George Romero panels this year, and also Creepshow 1 came out in 1987, which was when I was born, and the second one came out in 1989, but it came out on November 12th, which was my birthday." And the guy was like, "What?" No, like, it was like not okay. It was like not okay the way I was talking to him. He was like, "Are you autistic?"
Who the hell is this crazy?
Yeah, and it was just fucked up. So I like went to hand him money, and he was like, "Did you wash this money?" And I was like, "No, that's my sweat."
He asked you that?
Yeah, he said, "Did you wash this money?" I went, "No, it's my sweat. I'm sorry if I smell like a brewery." You're like, "I've been drinking all weekend talking about your bullshit that you fucking made."
I laundered this money for you, Martin.
Yeah. So basically I told him, like, yeah, Martin was, I spoke on the George Romero panel. I was super into Martin. I, like, went off on this guy in, like, a not okay way. And he went, "You know what? You're adorable. He signed me something, but he gave me a Creepshow fucking toy of the birthday cake.
Oh yeah, Bedelia.
The Father's Day birthday thing, or I guess it's not birthday, the Father's Day cake. Yeah. So he gave me like a little thing that he signed. Like,
nice.
Sorry, you're so sweaty. Here's a toy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
In any other context, that sounds horrible.
I know.
Sorry, you're so sweaty. Here's a toy. I saw the first one when I was really young. I remember, before I would get up for school, like I would get up like an hour or two early before I'd wake up. My parents were still asleep, and we had this huge, like, big console TV from the 70s from, like, Germany. You know, the one you, like, sit down on the floor and you gotta flip the knobs and go through it. And, like, I remember Creepshow was on at, like, 4 or 5 in the morning, and I came in on, like, I had missed, like, probably the first half of the birthday, or the Father's Day story, but I just remember being immediately sucked in. Ed Harris does that little dance.
Where's my cake, you bitch?
And I fell in love with that, and because I enjoyed Tales from the Crypt, and so seeing that was inspired by that, and then getting into those EC comics and stuff, I always loved the first one. And then when I saw the second one, I thought it was pretty funny. I love that guy in the second one who's like, "This beautiful hair is gonna take me to Hollywood." George Kennedy. Oh yeah,
Excellent.
that's the business.
I'll move to Re-Animator. Definitely gotta bring Re-Animator onto my list. That I feel like is something that a lot of people have seen.
It's like an essential.
It's an essential, yeah. If you haven't seen Re-Animator, definitely watch Re-Animator. Re-Animator 2, Brighter Re-Animator, and Re-Animator 3, Beyond Re-Animator are also fine. I just love this movie so much. Me and my best friend, Brie, have such a super strong connection to Re-Animator. We name every abandoned animal we find Dr. Herbert West. Also on my, I think it was like, okay, I'm 31 now, but I think it was on my 25th birthday, Andrew made me a CD, which was the Re-Animator theme 25 times in a row. And then at the end, it was a Misfits fucking Walk Among Us song that he redid by himself. Yeah, it was great. But yeah, Brie and I were very obsessed with Re-Animator. We would pop around town fucking listening to the Re-Animator theme and like bobbing our heads at people on the streets. Like that was our shit for sure when we were in high school. So yeah, Re-Animator is definitely a huge thing in my life. Dr. Herbert West.
Yeah, that's a classic. Lots of great stuff. Stuart Gordon, he's made a lot of really good movies.
I just feel like I shouldn't even talk about that one that much, but I guess, like, not everyone is as versed in movies as us. So, yeah, that one's definitely a classic. I got my fucking VHS of Re-Animator signed by Dr. Herbert West, and
The
it
doctor
said...
himself.
The doctor himself, and he signed it, like, cat dead, details later. Like, love you, or something like that. Nice. I was like, fuck yeah. I put Day of the Dead on here. I guess I put it on here just because of the idea of the movie was so interesting to me, of like doing kind of experiments on the dead or whatever, leading into movies like Shaun of the Dead and this and that, whatever. But yeah, like Day of the Dead was definitely... I know that they remade it recently, which I haven't seen, and they made Bub a rapist.
Oh, Jesus, what?
So Bub in Day of the Dead is like this almost lovable character that you're like, oh, like you almost start to feel for zombies. Like you're like, Bub is like the one that you feel for, that he's learning and he's whatever. But in the remake, I probably shouldn't speak too much to it because I haven't seen it, but I heard that they made Bub just a straight up rapist and not lovable, and which I kind of almost respect, because I think that was what was the thing in the main movie that, I mean, it was like the Tar Man, you know, like Bub was almost like the Tar Man, like he's the lovable character of the whole fucking, he's the memorable scene of the whole fucking movie. But
that's like doing a Forrest Gump sequel where Forrest Gump like kills babies.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
It's just more realistic. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
More child death. We're gonna have to make this a holiday and start just watching kid death movies one day of the year.
It's just my birthday. We just watch child death on my birthday.
Happy Child Death Day.
November 12th. Alright, so moving on from that would be Cannibal Holocaust, which I think is super important to talk about. Yeah, Cannibal Holocaust. Deodato was the director, and he was brought to court actually on a lot of the charges to do with this movie.
And it was not even necessarily just like the animal cruelty charges. Like, this movie was like a predecessor for Blair Witch, like the hype on that. Like, when Cannibal Holocaust came out, I'm pretty sure there was a story about how Ruggiero Deodato had the actors sign a clause saying they couldn't go on TV or do any other movies or anything. He was like, this has to be authentic. They have to think you guys really got eaten over there. And then,
correct.
sure enough, the authorities were like, hey, did those guys get, did they get eaten? Did they get killed? What happened?
Right. No, that definitely did happen, and 100% right on them doing the same thing with Blair Witch Project. But with Deodato's film, I mean, he had to go to court and prove that these people didn't actually die because it was so realistic. Cannibal Holocaust is basically, the premise is that it's a filmmaking group who had gone into the jungle to make a documentary about this cannibalistic tribe. So it's that same thing that we've touched on a couple times with like the filmmaking within filmmaking thing, which is cliche. But this was at the beginning of that, where it became a little too real. Yes, they showed real animal death. It was the 70s. There was a lot of that. However, he was actually following a tribe. So he was showing actual practices within this tribe that, like, the most famous scene I would say is the turtle being opened. They show every aspect of.
Yeah.
I was vegan when I watched that too, by the way. And I still didn't give a shit. I mean, it was real, and they...
Yeah, they, like, disembowel the turtle, and, you know...
But they utilize every single aspect of it. They use the shell to make a bowl. They use...
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I remember them saying, like, you know, well, we ate the turtle. It's not like we were just like, kill it for the camera. Like, they ate it. Everybody ate that for the set. That was craft services that night.
Right. No, any animal death, I think there was like a monkey's brain that was bashed in. No, they utilized everything that was shown was real. It's an actual tribe that used every part of the animal and is showing you how they actually live their lives.
Yeah, I mean, but plus the intention of the movie, it's not like it's just like an exploitation movie. It does have like its own sort of political aspect going on, where it's about, I mean, the film crew that goes out there to do it, they're all bad people, and they're trying to intentionally rig their documentary so that it looks more interesting. Like, they're setting up scenes, not using reality, sort of like how Jacob Petty and Prosperi did when they made, like, what was that film, Mondo Cane? You know, so it's almost like a takeoff on that, where these are bad people that are going out to a part of the world they don't know and exploiting the natives, and they get their comeuppance for it, you know?
But that makes it even the more believable.
Yeah.
Right?
One thing I would like to say about Cannibal Holocaust, I saw that movie in the theater in Atlanta, back at the Plaza, which I've talked about several times on the show. I love that theater. This was back when Johnny and Gail Ray owned it. They did this series called Splatter Cinema, and I asked a friend of mine who doesn't really watch movies like that to take me, because that was the only way I could get to the movie to go see it. I was like, well, come on, man, let's go see Cannibal Holocaust. And I'd seen it, so I knew what to expect. And I told him, I was like, this movie's kind of rough. We go in there, and, like, I love seeing movies like that with a crowd, because if you've already seen it, it's fun to watch the crowd's reaction and see if they're like, oh, you know, like, what gets under their skin. But another thing, like, my friend accidentally predicted that scene where the military guy or whatever gets the native to do the coke off the knife. You remember that?
Yeah.
He's putting, there's like this military guy, and he's like putting some cocaine on a knife, and he's like, he loves it, watch. My friend was like, oh, he's about to take a bump off that knife. And sure enough, this guy had never seen the movie. No, I think Cannibal Holocaust is a great movie, and all the controversy aside, I mean, it does have social merit. It's not like this is obscene for no reason. I mean,
well, I don't think controversy aside, I think controversy on the fucking table gives it merit. I think that the fact that the filmmaker had to go to court to prove that that wasn't real just goes to show how real that felt. And it felt like a documentary. And at the time, I mean, that almost brings me on to another one, which is the Guinea Pig series.
Yeah, that's like Flower, Flesh and Blood.
Yeah,
Mermaid in a Manhole.
So,
kind of
same thing. Guinea Pig series is, gosh, I think like 6 to 7 movies long. And the second movie, which is called Flower, Flesh and Blood, was reported to the FBI by none other than Charlie Sheen.
That's right. Moral man.
Yes, as saying, holy shit, I'm coked out of my fucking mind, and I think I just watched a fucking snuff video. I think it was the actual direct quote. No, I don't know. But yeah.
The snuff film ruined my orgy.
So basically the Guinea Pig series is a group of like 6 movies that is not based in anything filmmaking wise. It's all just a showcase of special effects. So each movie is not to be confused with a real movie. It's just special effects in your fucking face.
There isn't like a running story throughout those movies. They're all kind of like different stories, right?
Even within themselves, their stories are kind of lackluster. But yeah, Flower, Flesh, and Blood, which I think is the second or third movie in the I think it's the second in the series, is the one that Charlie Sheen called the FBI on, which is hilarious because the premise of that movie is a samurai who finds a schoolgirl on the street and just brings her to the secluded area and dismembers her for like an hour. Yeah. And yeah, it's fucking tragic and fucked up. And for sure, it's like pretty intense. Like, I'll give it that.
The effects are really well done.
No, the effects are insane. But there's filmmaking, like...
Yeah, techniques to it.
No, there's like... It's obviously a movie. Like, how high did you have to be to think that was, like, an actual snuff film? I mean, I've never seen an actual snuff film, which is my claim to fame, but...
Don't lie.
I don't know that as a fact, actually. I said it a little unsure, and I might be unsure. But I just think Charlie Sheen should have realized, for me, my favorite is Mermaid in a Manhole, which is, I think, the third or fourth one.
It's a nasty one.
It is very nasty, and I am an artist, so I guess that's why it speaks to me the most. But it's about a man who finds a mermaid in a manhole and brings her up to his apartment and decides to try to keep her there.
Does the sex to her.
He does a little bit of the sex to her. And as she starts decaying, her pussy wounds start pussing in different colors, so he uses the pus from the wounds to paint her. And it's super beautiful. Like, it doesn't sound great, but no, it is very beautiful. He paints her with herself, and I would say that's probably my favorite guinea pig movie.
Favorite in the series.
Yeah.
Who puts Dutch angles in a snuff film? Like, that's the most...
No, exactly. So much about that in retrospect is ridiculous.
So, I know another one that you had on there is Escape from Tomorrow. That's
that was next.
From the last few years, that's the movie they snuck into Disneyland to make and got sued for, I think.
So Escape from Tomorrow. I love that movie, and I'm putting it on my list because they did guerrilla filmmaking, which I have done. I've tried a lot to get permission for everywhere that I've filmed, but to be honest, I know that I haven't. Yeah. That film, for sure, they got no permission at all. But when you're filming within Disneyland and Disney World, how the fuck are you supposed to get permission? I mean, you can't have permission to film your family,
you gotta
right?
talk to Mickey Mouse himself.
Exactly. So a lot of that movie was filmed mostly in Disney World, actually, but also in Disneyland, yes. How do you even begin with that movie?
Well, also, it's interesting because not only did they, like, kind of, like, sneak into Disneyland, like, film it on the sly, but it's also like an anti-Disneyland movie. So they went to Disneyland to make a movie about how Disney sucks families into this like underground dome and like experiments on them and stuff like that.
Yeah, they do that. But at the same time, it's like after they filmed it and they started kind of advertising it, Disney tried to pull themselves away from it, but they wouldn't straight up denounce the movie. So they were like, yes, this happened. They're pretty okay with the fact that it happened, but they were like, we're not gonna even touch it. Like, they weren't even gonna say yes or no about it. They just didn't want to touch it at fucking all. Which, if you've seen it, you'd understand why. Like, it's so fucking off the rails, like...
Yeah, it's just a really bizarre movie. It's got some really trippy imagery, and it's like black and white, so it's kind of even crazier, this monochrome look to it.
Yeah, I think that definitely helped with the craziness. I would say that is one movie that when you go in, like, you don't know what unless you've seen a trailer. No, you know what? Even if you've seen the trailer, I don't think you know what the fuck you're getting into. Like... Yeah.
And they weren't even the first people to do that, but, like, the fact that they made a whole movie out of it is really fascinating. But, like, there was a movie from the 80s called Blonde Death, and the director did a scene that takes place at Disneyland, where like these criminals go to Disneyland and one of them like slips acid in the water and like, or some sort of drug that ends up poisoning and killing everybody at Disneyland.
Right.
So like, and they actually snuck in there and filmed that. So, you know, but the fact that they were able to make a whole movie in there is pretty cool.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I know. That was successful, but the fact that they were able to make an entire movie based on this movie is based in complete fantasy too. Like, it is off its fucking rocker. Like, once you finally reach like even the cat flu thing, this movie goes so off the fucking its own rails, it doesn't even know what it's trying to do. Alright, so Deranged is next on my list. That is on my list because I'm a huge fan of serial killers. I do panels speaking about true serial killer stories, and Deranged is the most true-to-life serial killer movie, in my opinion, that's ever been made. Which is silly because in Deranged, they don't name him Ed Gein. His name is Ezra Cobb, I think?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's not Ed Gein, but it is, I would say, the most true-to-life story of a serial killer. That movie's fucking gross. That movie's fucking awesome. Everything about it is fucking perfect for a serial killer tale. However, it's also just so true to the fucking story of Ed Gein that it's got to be mentioned. I mean, I always have to mention that one. Yeah, Deranged.
And that a lot of the people who worked on that movie was like Bob Clark and his people, like the same people that made like Black Christmas and fucking yeah. So that's a really good one. I think I mean a lot of movies were inspired by Ed Gein, like Texas Chainsaw or Silence of the Lambs, but Deranged is almost like an adaptation of that story, but just with the names changed.
And I feel like saying that doesn't like give it the proper, like Black Christmas is like a movie made like it's a movie. Deranged is like
has that documentary feel almost in places.
Sure.
Yeah. So what would be the last movie on your list here?
Last movie on my list would, I guess, be American Werewolf in London, which I don't really have that much to say about it. I just think that I needed to put it on my list because it's a punk-ass fucking 80s horror movie.
Without being overtly, like, punk or referencing it, like, in a way that Return of the Living Dead does, it just has that kind of attitude that's funny and brash. And
yeah.
It's energetic, you know.
I just feel like if anyone wants to make a movie with me or a baby with me, you need to like this movie.
If you don't like American Werewolf in London, you can't hang.
Yeah, that was erotic.
That movie, I mean, it is funny. Like, there's that. I think that might be probably my favorite movie of that director's, next to like Kentucky Fried Movie, which I'm a big fan of. But yeah, John Landis. I mean, it's interesting if you look at American Werewolf in London, you see shades of that in his other movies. Like, you know, like at the climax of the movie where the werewolf is running around in the streets and the cars are crashing into each other. That's like the Blues Brothers, you know. And then you've also got a lot of that dark comedy that's in a lot of his films. And I'm a big fan of Griffin Dunne. That actor who plays the dead friend who comes back and he's like, you gotta kill yourself, bud. That guy is so good. I love Griffin Dunne.
See, just this alone, I realize we're gonna have to make another list and probably come back to this.
His nurse in that movie?
No, I just mean me as someone who enjoys movies.
I just wanted to say that his nurse in that movie was really hot. Jenny Agutter from Walkabout. You're a charming American boy. I love you even though you're really hairy. She was like Daphne from Frasier before that. But no, yeah, I mean, yeah, American Werewolf in London. That's a great one. It's a classic. I mean, a lot of people have seen that one, but it is a really great movie. I watched it again recently. It always holds up. It's got great effects. It's really funny. There's some genuine creepy stuff in there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously a lot of these are just scratch the surface. Definitely got a lot more on my list, but
yeah, no, that's a pretty solid list of movies. There are a lot of influential stuff. If you haven't seen any of these movies on the list, definitely check out as many as you can because there's a lot of classics here. There's a few you might not have heard of. And yeah, I mean, we covered a few decades here from like the 70s up through the modern decade, like the 2000s, 2010s, and yeah, there's a pretty wide variety of stuff in here. I mean, if you haven't seen any of this stuff, like I said, a lot of it is maybe a little more well-known, but there is a reason a lot of these movies are classics. They still hold up well. They're really good in the theater, if you can catch them theatrically. I mean, a lot of them play well at home, but they're fun crowd movies for sure. Like, I saw Return of the Living Dead in the theater, and that was one of the best crowds I've ever had at a movie, you know. But So yeah, definitely a pretty solid list there. I'd like to thank Tori for coming on the show again.
Dude, thank you so much.
Absolutely. So for now, that's going to conclude the Video Psychosis podcast. This was episode 9. I'm Strong Knotz.
And I'm Tori Sinclair.
And goodbye.